A stranded billionaire, a mysterious pendant, a desert encounter. Secrets unravel, threatening to rewrite a tragic past with heart-stopping truths. Welcome to Life Bond Tales. Enjoy the story and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. The Arizona sun blazed like a furnace over the cracked asphalt of Route 89, its heat warping the horizon into a shimmering mirage as James Thornton eased his sleek electric SUV to the shoulder with a frustrated curse. The vehicle, a custom-built marvel from his own tech empire, had betrayed him at the worst possible moment, its dashboard flashing cryptic error codes he couldn't decipher. At 48, James was no stranger to control, having turned a fledgling startup into a billion-dollar juggernaut through sheer will and sleepless nights. But today, control slipped through his fingers like desert sand. Just hours earlier, a critical merger had collapsed in Phoenix, costing him millions and a year of negotiations, the sting of failure sharper than any he'd felt since his fiancée Laura's death 25 years ago. He'd dismissed his driver, craving solitude to wrestle with the loss, but now, stranded under a merciless sky, he regretted that choice. His phone, predictably, was dead, its battery drained from endless calls to salvage the deal. Sweat beaded on his forehead, soaking the collar of his tailored navy suit, now feeling more like a $4,000 prison than a symbol of success. In the distance, a faded sign for the Cactus Bloom Diner creaked in the hot breeze, promising coffee and pie but little else. James squinted through the windshield, weighing his options: wait in the roasting car or trek miles to the diner for help. Neither appealed to a man who thrived on decisive action. As he loosened his silk tie, a low rumble broke his thoughts. A rusty red pickup truck slowing beside his SUV. James tensed, city instincts flaring, but relaxed slightly when a young woman hopped out, her boots kicking up dust. "Car trouble," she called, her voice carrying a practical confidence that cut through the haze. She was maybe 24, with sun-kissed skin and a dark braid swinging over one shoulder, her faded jeans and grease-stained flannel shirt bearing a cactus bloom name tag that read Emma. James forced a tight smile, his pride bristling at needing help from a stranger, let alone a diner waitress. "Unless you're a mechanic, I doubt you can do much," he said, wincing at his own sharp tone. Emma raised an eyebrow, unfazed, and wiped her hands on a rag from her pocket. "Grew up fixing my dad's old Ford in his shop. Let's see what's under the hood." Her straightforward manner disarmed him, and he nodded, popping the hood, with a reluctant flick of the latch. As Emma leaned over the engine, her hands moving with surprising skill, something slipped from her shirt, catching the sunlight in a glint of silver. A crescent moon pendant swung on a delicate chain, its intricate design stopping James's breath. His heart lurched, memories flooding back of Laura, her laughter, her warmth, and the identical pendant he'd designed for her, a one-of-a-kind gift lost when her yacht sank off the California coast. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper, barely audible over the desert wind. Emma glanced up, confused, then followed his gaze to the necklace, her hand closing protectively around it. It's the only thing I have from my birth mother, left with me at a Tucson orphanage when I was a baby." Her words hit like a thunderbolt, the world tilting beneath James's feet. Laura had been pregnant when she died, a secret they'd shared only with each other, and the timing, 25 years ago, matched Emma's age too perfectly to be coincidence. His mind raced, piecing together impossibilities: the pendant, the orphanage, a daughter he never knew. Emma, oblivious to his turmoil, pointed to a loose battery cable. "Here's your problem. I can fix it in 10 minutes if you've got some water." James nodded mechanically, retrieving a bottle from the car, his eyes never leaving the pendant as it swayed with her movements. Each glint of silver felt like a heartbeat, a connection to a past he'd buried under years of ambition and grief. As Emma worked, humming softly, James's skepticism battled a growing certainty that this chance encounter was no accident, that the desert had delivered not just a mechanic, but a ghost from his past, wearing the face of a daughter he'd never dared imagine. He gripped the SUV's frame to steady himself, the heat no longer his greatest adversary, but the weight of a truth that could reshape his entire existence. Emma's hands moved with practiced ease over the SUV's engine, her fingers deftly tightening the loose battery cable as the Arizona sun cast long shadows across the dusty highway. The crescent moon pendant swayed gently at her throat, each glint a silent accusation that James Thornton couldn't ignore, its silver surface etched with memories of Laura, her soft smile, the way she'd traced the pendant's curves during quiet moments promising forever. James stood frozen, the water bottle clutched in his hand, his mind a storm of questions he wasn't ready to voice. 25 years ago, Laura's yacht had vanished in a Pacific storm. Her body never recovered. The pendant, a custom piece he'd designed with a hidden clasp for their initials, presumed lost with her. Yet here it was, worn by a young woman, who could be his daughter, left at an orphanage with no trace of her origins. Emma's voice broke his reverie, practical and steady. "Try starting it now." James slid into the driver's seat, the engine humming to life as if nothing had happened, but the world felt irrevocably altered. He stepped out, forcing composure, and offered a crisp nod. "You saved me a long walk. Let me pay you for your trouble." Emma waved him off, wiping her hands on the rag, her brown eyes warm but guarded. "No need, just helping out. I've got to get back to the diner. My shift's starting soon, and my mom needs her insulin tonight." The mention of her mother stirred something in James, a pang of curiosity about the life Emma led, the family who'd raised her after the orphanage. "Your mom?" he asked, careful to keep his tone neutral. "Not by blood," Emma said, climbing into her pickup. "Margaret took me in when I was 12 after the foster system chewed me up. She's all I've got." James's throat tightened, the weight of her words sinking in. A life built on borrowed connections, anchored by a single piece of silver, linking her to a past she didn't know. He reached into his wallet, pulling out a business card, his name embossed in stark letters, James Thornton, CEO, Thornton Dynamics. "If you ever need anything, a job, a favor, or if you want to talk about that pendant, call me." Emma took the card, her brow furrowing as she read it, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. Thornton Dynamics, the tech giant. She studied him, as if seeing past the suit to the man unraveling beneath it. "What would you know about my necklace?" James hesitated, the truth too raw, too impossible to speak yet. "It's a unique design. I've seen one like it before." His voice was steady, but his heart pounded, each beat urging him to ask more, to demand answers, but Emma was already starting her truck, the engine's growl swallowing the moment. "Thanks for the card," she said, offering a small smile. "Maybe I'll call." As her pickup rattled away, dust swirling in its wake, James watched until it vanished around a bend, the pendant's image burned into his mind. He climbed, back into the SUV, the air-conditioned interior a stark contrast to the desert's heat, but it did nothing to cool the fire of suspicion igniting within him. Laura had been 6 months pregnant when the yacht sank, a fact he'd shared only with his mentor, Victor Hayes, who'd handled the grim aftermath, assuring James there were no survivors. Victor, now a powerful shareholder in Thornton Dynamics, had been his rock during those dark days, helping rebuild the company while James drowned in grief. But the pendant's reappearance cracked that foundation, raising questions James hadn't dared ask in decades. Was it possible Laura had survived, long enough to give birth? Had Victor lied about the wreckage, the recovery efforts? The thought was a betrayal, but the pendant was no coincidence. It was a clue, a tether to a truth buried for 25 years. James's fingers tightened on the steering wheel, his empire's collapse fading to insignificance against the possibility of a daughter, a family he'd never known. He pulled onto the highway, the Cactus Bloom diner shrinking in his rearview mirror, but Emma's face, her sharp eyes, her quiet resilience, stayed with him, a mirror to Laura's strength. In Phoenix, he'd hire a private investigator, someone discreet to dig into Emma's past, the orphanage and Victor's role in the accident. The pendant wasn't just a keepsake, it was a key, and James would unlock its secrets no matter the cost. As the desert stretched before him, vast and unforgiving, a flicker of hope stirred in his chest, fragile but fierce, whispering that the life he'd mourned might not be lost after all. Emma, meanwhile, drove toward the diner, James's card tucked in her pocket, its weight heavier than its size suggested. She touched the pendant absently, its familiar shape a comfort through years of unanswered questions. why her mother had left her, what the crescent moon meant. Margaret's warnings about strangers echoed in her mind, but James's reaction to the necklace, the raw shock in his eyes, felt like a door cracking open to a past she'd long accepted as closed. The diner's neon sign loomed ahead, a beacon, in the fading light, but for the first time Emma felt the pull of something beyond its worn booths and coffee-stained counters, a mystery that might finally give her a name, a history, a place to belong. James Thornton's private jet sliced through the twilight sky toward Phoenix, the desert below fading into a patchwork of shadows, but his mind was far from the glittering skyline awaiting him. The crescent moon pendant, identical to the one he'd crafted for Laura 25 years ago, haunted him, its image superimposed over every thought, a silver beacon pulling him toward a truth he both craved and feared. Emma's casual revelation, that it was her only link to her birth mother, left with her at a Tucson orphanage, had shattered the fragile wall he'd built around his grief, exposing questions he'd buried with Laura's memory. The yacht, accident, Victor Hayes's assurances of no survivors, the absence of Laura's body, all now felt like pieces of a puzzle deliberately misassembled. James's fingers drummed on the armrest, his tailored suit rumpled from the day's chaos. The failed merger, a distant ache compared to the possibility of a daughter. In Phoenix, he'd called Rachel Cole, a private investigator with a reputation for discretion and tenacity, instructing her to meet him at his penthouse office. Rachel arrived promptly, her sharp grey eyes scanning the room as she set a laptop on his mahogany desk. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, her short cropped hair catching the city lights filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. James didn't bother with pleasantries. "I need you to dig into a young woman named Emma Ruiz, approximately 24, works at the Cactus Bloom Diner off Route 89. She was left at a Tucson orphanage as a baby, around November 2000. Find out everything. Her birth records, the orphanage's intake files, who dropped her off." He slid Emma's description and the diner's location across the desk, hesitating before adding, "And look into a silver crescent moon pendant she wears. It's personal." Rachel raised an eyebrow but didn't press, her fingers already flying over the keyboard. "Anything else?" James's voice tightened. "Victor Hayes, my mentor, major shareholder in Thornton Dynamics. He handled the aftermath of a yacht accident in May 2000, where my fiancée Laura Bennett died. She was pregnant. I need to know what he did, what he saw, and if he lied." Rachel's typing paused, her gaze meeting his, reading the weight of his words. "This is more than a background check, isn't it?" James nodded, the admission raw. "I think Emma might be my daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy with hope and dread, as Rachel promised results within 48 hours. Meanwhile, at the Cactus Bloom Diner, Emma poured coffee for a late-shift trucker, her movements automatic but her mind elsewhere, replaying James's shock at her pendant, his business card burning a hole in her pocket. The diner's neon buzz and clinking dishes couldn't drown out the questions swelling inside her. Why had a tech billionaire cared so much about a trinket? Why had his eyes held such raw pain? She glanced at the clock, her shift ending soon, and thought of Margaret, her adoptive mother, waiting at their modest Tucson apartment. Margaret's insulin was running low, and Emma's tips would cover the next refill, a routine that grounded her in a life of hard-won stability. As she drove home, the desert night cool against her skin, she touched the pendant, its smooth edges a lifeline through years of foster homes and unanswered questions. Margaret was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili, her graying hair pulled back, her hands steady despite her diabetes. "You're late," she said, her tone warm but edged with worry. Emma set James's card on the counter, recounting the roadside encounter, the pendant's significance to him. Margaret's spoon stilled, her face paling as she read the name. "Thornton Dynamics. You stay away from men like that, Emma. Rich folks don't help people like us without wanting something." Her voice was sharp, a rare crack in her usual calm, and Emma frowned, sensing a fear Margaret wasn't explaining. "He wasn't like that, Mum. He looked haunted, like the necklace meant something to him." Margaret turned away, busying herself with the stove. but her trembling hands betrayed her. "Some things are better left alone, sweetheart. That pendant's all you've got of your past. Don't let a stranger turn it into trouble." Emma wanted to argue, to demand why. Margaret seemed so rattled, but the weight of the day held her back. Later, in her small bedroom, she studied the pendant under a lamp, its crescent shape gleaming, a tiny clasp she'd never noticed before catching her eye. It wouldn't budge, but its presence felt heavier now, a secret waiting to be unlocked. Across town, Rachel Cole burned the midnight oil, her contacts in Tucson pulling strings to access sealed orphanage records. By dawn, she had a preliminary report. Emma Ruiz, left at Hope Haven Orphanage on November 12, 2000, estimated 6 months old, no birth certificate, no parental names. The intake form noted a silver crescent moon pendant to remain with the child, and a cash payment for a year's care, made by an unidentified woman who vanished. The timing aligned chillingly with Laura's accident in May 2000, and Rachel's gut told her James's instincts were right. She cross-referenced Victor Hayes' activities in 2000, finding he'd overseen the accident's investigation, claiming the yacht's wreckage was too deep to recover bodies. A red flag emerged. Victor had liquidated a Thornton Dynamics subsidiary weeks after the accident, funneling millions into an offshore account. Rachel's pulse quickened. Victor wasn't just a grieving friend, he was a man with secrets. She sent James an encrypted message. "Orphanage records confirm Emma's timeline. Victor's financials are suspicious. Digging deeper. Meet tomorrow." James, sleepless in his penthouse, stared at Laura's old photo, her pendant gleaming. At her throat, her smile a wound that never healed. Emma's face, her quiet strength, echoed Laura's in ways he couldn't dismiss. If Victor had lied, if Laura had survived long enough to give birth, what else had been hidden? The pendant was the key, and Emma, unknowingly, held it. As the city hummed below, James vowed to uncover the truth, not just for himself, but for the daughter he'd never known, whose existence felt like a second chance at the family he'd lost. James Thornton's heart pounded as he slipped through the shadowed corridors of the Sedona Wellness Institute, a secluded medical facility, nestled among Arizona's red rock cliffs, its sleek facade masking secrets he was determined to unearth. Disguised in a borrowed consultant's coat, his tech empire's resources securing him a temporary access badge, he followed Rachel Cole's lead that a patient, listed only as LB, had been admitted 25 years ago under funding tied to Victor Hayes. The crescent moon pendant, Emma's sole inheritance from her birth mother, had ignited a suspicion James couldn't shake. Laura, his fiancée, presumed dead in the 2000 yacht accident, might be alive, hidden in plain sight. Rachel's late-night report had been chilling. Hope Haven Orphanage records confirmed Emma's abandonment 6 months after the accident, and Victor's financial trail led to this clinic, where millions funneled through shell companies sustained a single secretive patient. James's breath caught as he reached the secure wing, its keycard lock yielding to a hacked code Rachel had sourced. Inside, the air was sterile, heavy with the hum of medical equipment, and there, in a dimly lit room, lay a frail woman, her gaunt face framed by grey-streaked hair, connected to monitors and an IV drip. It was Laura. Despite the ravages of time and induced unconsciousness, her features, the gentle curve of her jaw, the faint scar on her temple from a childhood fall, were unmistakable. James's knees buckled, grief and rage colliding as he gripped the bedrail, tears blurring his vision. 25 years stolen, her vibrant spirit imprisoned in this clinical tomb, kept comatose while he'd built an empire on the ashes of her loss. The chart at her bedside confirmed her identity. Laura Bennett, admitted May 2000, post-traumatic injuries, pregnancy noted, delivery in November. Emma was their daughter, born in this very facility, then spirited away to an orphanage with only the pendant as proof of her existence. James's fingers trembled as he touched Laura's hand, her skin cool but alive, a pulse beneath his touch, reigniting a hope he'd buried decades ago. Across Tucson, Emma Ruiz wiped down tables at the Cactus Bloom Diner, her shift dragging as James's business card weighed heavy in her pocket, his haunted reaction to her pendant stirring a restless need for answers. She'd tried the pendant's tiny clasp again last night, but it refused to open, its secret locked tight. Margaret's cryptic warnings, avoid James, leave the past alone, only fueled her curiosity, a lifetime of wondering who she was clashing, with her loyalty to the woman who'd raised her. As the diner emptied, a sleek black car pulled into the lot, and Emma's pulse quickened when Nathan Thornton, James's cousin, stepped out, his easy smile and tousled hair at odds with his tailored blazer. A photojournalist who'd wandered the world, Nathan had stopped by the diner earlier that week, charmed by Emma's wit and resilience, and now he was back, claiming a craving for her coffee, but clearly seeking more. "Heard you fixed my cousin's car," he said, leaning against the counter, his green eyes studying her pendant. "He's not usually rattled, but you left an impression." Emma's guard softened, Nathan's warmth disarming her, and she admitted James's interest in the necklace felt personal, like he knew something she didn't. Nathan's brow furrowed, his own memories of Laura, his cousin's radiant fiancée, lost before he'd joined the family business, stirring as he noticed the pendant's crescent shape, eerily familiar from old photos. "Mind if I take a closer look?" he asked, and Emma hesitated before letting him hold it, his fingers brushing hers, a spark of connection she couldn't ignore. Back at the clinic, a nurse named Sarah Delgado entered Laura's room, her routine, check halting when she saw James, his consultant's coat not quite hiding his raw emotion. Sarah, who'd cared for Laura for 3 years, had grown uneasy with the patient's endless sedation, her subtle signs of awareness, finger twitches, tears during quiet talks, suggesting a mind fighting to surface. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, but James's desperate plea, "She's my fiancée, kept from me for 25 years, cracked her resolve. Sarah checked the hall, then locked the door, revealing she'd reduced Laura's sedative dose days ago, risking her job, after noticing increased brain activity. "She's trying to wake up," Sarah said, showing James a monitor spike as Laura's hand twitched under his touch. James's mind raced. Laura alive, Emma their daughter, Victor's betrayal orchestrating it all. He begged Sarah to help, protect Laura, promising to expose the truth, and she nodded, her own conscience demanding action. In Tucson, Nathan handed the pendant back to Emma, his expression troubled. "James lost someone who wore something like this. His fiancée Laura died in an accident when I was a kid. If it's the same design, it's no coincidence." Emma's heart stuttered. The possibility that her pendant tied her to James's, past both thrilling and terrifying. Nathan offered to drive her to Phoenix to confront James directly, but Emma hesitated, Margaret's fear echoing in her mind. "I need to talk to my mom first," she said, sensing Margaret knew more than she'd admitted. As Nathan left, promising to check in tomorrow, Emma felt the pendant's weight, its mystery no longer just a keepsake, but a bridge to a family she'd never known. At the clinic, James slipped out as Sarah adjusted Laura's IV, her whispered words to the unconscious woman, "You're not alone anymore," a vow to help her reclaim her life. James called Rachel from his car, his voice shaking with urgency. "It's Laura. She's alive, drugged for decades. Victor's behind it. Can't Emma's our daughter. I need everything on this facility now." Rachel, already tracing Victor's offshore accounts, promised to dig deeper, warning James to stay low. Victor's influence ran deep, and any move could tip him off. As James drove into the night, Sedona's cliffs looming like silent sentinels, he pictured Emma's face, her strength a mirror of Laura's, and vowed to reunite his family no matter the cost. The pendant, Laura's survival, Emma's existence. They were threads of a tapestry Victor had tried to unravel, but James would weave them back together, stitch by painful stitch. Victor Hayes's polished facade gleamed under the fluorescent lights of the Cactus Bloom Diner, his tailored suit and practiced smile stark against the worn booths and coffee-stained counter. But Emma Ruiz felt a chill as he approached, his presence an intrusion into her world of hard-earned normalcy. The crescent moon pendant at her throat seemed to pulse with warning, its mystery now tangled with James Thornton's claim that it belonged to his lost fiancée, Laura, and Nathan's suspicion that it linked her to a tragedy 25 years old. Victor, James's mentor and Thornton Dynamics' second-largest shareholder, had arrived unannounced, his sleek black car idling outside like a predator waiting to pounce. "Emma Ruiz," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. "I'm Victor Hayes, a friend of James Thornton. May we speak privately?" Emma's instincts screamed caution, Margaret's warnings about wealthy strangers echoing, but curiosity and the pendant's weight urged her forward, so she nodded, leading him to a corner booth. Victor's eyes flicked to the necklace, a flash of something, fear, calculation, crossing his face before he masked it with concern. "James speaks highly of you," he began, folding his hands. "Your help with his car impressed him, and he's nominated you for a Thornton Foundation scholarship, full tuition, living expenses, a future at our company." Emma's pulse quickened, the offer dazzling yet unsettling, its timing too perfect after James's reaction to her pendant. "Why me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the unease curling in her gut. "I'm nobody special." Victor leaned forward, his smile tightening. "James sees potential in you, but we need to verify your background, orphanage records, birth parents, that pendant's origin." The mention of the necklace snapped Emma's guard up. He knew too much, his interest too pointed. Across Phoenix, James Thornton stood in his penthouse office. Rachel Cole's latest findings spread across his desk like a map to his shattered past. Laura, alive but comatose in Sedona, had given birth to Emma, their daughter, before Victor's scheme buried her in a drugged limbo, funded by millions siphoned from Thornton Dynamics. Rachel's voice crackled through the phone, urgent. "Victor's in Tucson. My contact spotted his car near the cactus bloom. He's moving to control Emma, maybe silence her." James's blood ran cold, rage and fear colliding as he realized Victor's desperation to protect his lies could endanger his daughter. He grabbed his keys, calling Nathan, who was already en route to the diner, to check on Emma after their earlier talk. "Get to her now," James urged, his voice raw. "Victor's there and he's dangerous." At the diner, Emma deflected Victor's probing, her hand closing protectively over the pendant. "It's just a keepsake from my mother. The orphanage. Didn't know her name." Victor's eyes narrowed, sensing her evasion, and he pressed further, his tone hardening. "A crescent moon design is distinctive. James believes it's tied to his late fiancée, Laura. He's unwell, chasing delusions. For your safety, you should come with me to Phoenix, where we can sort this out." Emma's heart raced, James's haunted gaze flashing in her mind, his sincerity clashing with Victor's slick warnings. Before she could respond, Nathan burst through the diner's door, his presence a lifeline. "Emma, you okay?" he asked, positioning himself between her and Victor, his jaw set. Victor's composure flickered, irritation breaking through. "Nathan, this is a private matter." Nathan ignored him, turning to Emma. "James called. He's on his way, and he says Victor's not what he seems." Emma's resolve hardened, and she stood, clutching the pendant. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Mr. Hayes." Victor's hand twitched toward his jacket, but the diner's late-night regulars, sensing tension, turned their attention, and he backed off, his smile forced. "We'll speak again," he said, retreating to his car, leaving Emma trembling, but defiant. Nathan stayed close, his hand on her shoulder, grounding her as she processed the encounter, the pendant's significance now a beacon of danger and truth. In Sedona, Sarah Delgado monitored Laura's vitals, her decision to lower the sedatives yielding startling results. Laura's eyes fluttered open briefly, a rasped whisper of "James" escaping her lips before exhaustion pulled her back. Sarah, risking everything, texted James, "She's waking, hurry!" James, speeding toward Tucson, felt hope and dread collide, Laura's survival a miracle tainted by Victor's betrayal. Rachel's next call confirmed the worst. Victor had orchestrated the yacht accident to eliminate Laura, who'd discovered his embezzlement, then kept her comatose to hide his crimes, using Emma's orphanage placement to erase their family. James's mind flashed to Emma, her quiet strength a mirror of Laura's, and he vowed to protect her, to bring them all together. In Tucson, Emma and Nathan drove to Margaret's apartment, needing answers about her adoptive mother's fear. Margaret, pale and shaken, admitted recognizing the pendant from her days as a nurse at a Tucson hospital, where a woman, Laura, had been admitted post-accident, pregnant and incoherent before vanishing into Victor's custody. "I saw the pendant when you arrived at the orphanage," Margaret confessed, tears falling. "I kept quiet to protect you, fearing whoever hid her would come for you." Emma's world tilted, the pendant no longer just a keepsake, but proof of a mother stolen, a father she'd met by chance. Nathan squeezed her hand, his own shock at Victor's betrayal fueling his resolve to help. As they planned to meet James, a black SUV tailed them, Victor's men closing in, alerted by his diner visit. In Phoenix, James coordinated with Rachel, who'd uncovered a microchip in Laura's pendant design, mentioned in old company files as a failsafe Laura created to store evidence of Victor's crimes. James realized Emma's pendant held the key to exposing Victor, its clasp hiding a truth worth killing for. He reached Tucson just as Nathan called, reporting the tale. "Get to the diner, it's public," James instructed, speeding to intercept, his heart pounding for the daughter he'd only just found. At the cactus bloom, Emma clutched the pendant, its weight a promise and a threat, as Nathan stood guard, their bond deepening in the face of danger. James's car screeched into the lot, his eyes locking on Emma, the pendant gleaming under the neon sign, a symbol of a family torn apart but not destroyed. Victor's SUV loomed nearby, but James's arrival shifted the balance, his presence a vow to end the lies. Emma, caught between fear and hope, touched the pendant, sensing its truth was about to change everything, her life no longer that of an orphaned waitress, but of a daughter with a legacy to claim. James Thornton's private jet touched down at a discreet Phoenix airfield under a starlit desert sky, the hum of its engines fading as an ambulance waited on the tarmac, ready to whisk Laura to a secure medical facility he'd arranged through Rachel Cole's contacts. Inside the jet's medical bay, Laura lay fragile but awake, her once vibrant form hollowed by 25 years of induced coma, yet her eyes, those same luminous eyes Emma inherited, held a fierce determination as they met James's, her trembling hand clutching his. The crescent moon pendant, now resting on her chest after Sarah Delgado's careful transfer from Sedona, gleamed like a reclaimed promise, its microchip holding evidence that would bury Victor Hayes. James's heart swelled with a mix of miracle and tragedy, holding Laura after decades of believing her dead, but his thoughts raced to Emma, their daughter, still unaware of her true heritage, now in Tucson with Nathan, pursued by Victor's men. "Find her, James," Laura whispered, her voice raspy, but resolute. "Bring our daughter to me." James kissed her forehead, tears falling as he promised, "I will, my love." "You're both safe now." Sarah, the nurse who'd risked everything to awaken Laura, monitored her vitals, nodding to James as he stepped away, his phone buzzing with Nathan's urgent message. "At the cactus bloom. Victor's men are circling. Need you now." James's rage flared. Victor, his mentor-turned-betrayer, had stolen his family, embezzled millions, and now threatened Emma to protect his empire. He sped toward Tucson, Rachel's voice crackling through his earpiece, confirming the microchips. Contents, account numbers, transaction logs, proof of Victor's sabotage of Laura's yacht to silence her discovery of his crimes. At the Cactus Bloom diner, Emma stood behind the counter, the pendant heavy around her neck, its clasp unyielding but its significance undeniable after Margaret's confession that Laura, her birth mother, had been hidden by Victor after giving birth. Nathan, ever vigilant, scanned the parking lot where two black SUVs idled, their tinted windows hiding Victor's hired muscle. His hand brushed Emma's, a steadying anchor as her world reshaped, the orphaned waitress now a daughter with a living mother and a father fighting to reach her. "James is coming," Nathan said, his voice calm but firm, "and I won't let anything happen to you." Emma's fear mingled with a fierce resolve, the pendant a talisman of a family she'd never known, but now yearned to reclaim. Margaret, at home, packed a bag, her guilt over years of silence spurring her to call an old hospital colleague, hoping to uncover more about Laura's disappearance, unaware that Victor's network was closing in. In Phoenix, Laura's ambulance reached the secure facility, Sarah coordinating with a trusted doctor as Laura whispered fragments of memory, Victor's betrayal, the yacht's explosion, her desperate plea to save her unborn child. The microchip, she'd told Sarah, was her insurance hidden in the pendant she insured reached Emma, a beacon to expose Victor's crimes. James's car screeched into the diner's lot, his eyes locking on Emma through the neon-lit windows, her face a mirror of Laura's strength. Nathan met him at the door, briefing him on the SUVs, and James's resolve hardened. "Emma, I'm your father," he said, stepping inside, his voice breaking with emotion. "Your mother, Laura, is alive. Victor kept her from us, but she's waiting for you." Emma's breath caught, the pendant's weight grounding her as James's words confirmed Margaret's truth, her heart torn between disbelief and longing. Before she could respond, Victor's men entered, their presence a silent threat, but James faced them, his billionaire status a shield. "Leave or face consequences," he warned, Rachel's federal contacts already en route. The men hesitated, then retreated, outnumbered by the diner's late-night crowd and James's authority. Emma, trembling, touched the pendant, its clasp finally yielding under her fingers, revealing the microchip. "Laura told me to protect this," she whispered, handing it to James, who realized its power to end Victor's reign. Nathan drove them to Phoenix, the SUVs trailing but keeping distance, as James called Rachel, who'd secured Victor's arrest warrant based on the microchip's data and Sarah's testimony. At the medical facility, Emma stepped into Laura's room, the pendant gleaming at her throat, its twin around Laura's neck a symbol of their unbroken bond. Laura's eyes, weak but radiant, met Emma's, and she reached out, whispering, "My daughter, you're here." Emma took her hand, tears falling as she saw her own features in Laura's face, the pendant's crescent moon a bridge across 25 stolen years. "I kept it safe," Emma said, her voice choking, "like you wanted." Laura's smile, fragile but fierce, spoke of love that had endured darkness. James joined them, completing their circle, his hand on Emma's shoulder as Laura recounted her fight to survive, her trust in the pendant to find them. Outside, Nathan coordinated with Rachel, ensuring Victor's men were detained while Margaret arrived, her guilt eased by Emma's forgiveness, her role as a protector acknowledged. The microchip, now with federal agents, dismantled Victor's empire, his arrest broadcast across news channels as Thornton Dynamics reclaimed its stolen funds. In a quiet Tucson chapel weeks later, under stained-glass light, James and Laura renewed their vows, their love aflame unextinguished by time. Emma, baptized as Emma Bennett Thornton, stood between them, the pendant a testament to her reclaimed identity, her strength forged by Margaret's care and Laura's sacrifice. Nathan, now Emma's confidant and budding love, toasted their future, his own journey intertwined with theirs. Margaret and Sarah, witnesses to the ceremony, wept, their choices, flawed but loving, redeemed by this reunion. As spring bloomed, the Thornton family stood under a desert oak, the pendant's crescent moon catching the sun, its microchip no longer a secret, but a symbol of justice. Emma, touching it, felt her mother's pulse in her own, her father's, hope in her future, and knew her journey, from orphaned waitress to cherished daughter, was just beginning. James, holding Laura and Emma close, understood love's traces could never be erased, their family whole against all odds, the desert, sky above them vast with possibility.